I'm gonna try maybe leaving the meeting and rejoining and seeing if that helps, because all my other applications I can hear just fine, just not Teams.
Okay.
Weird.
All right. Well, I'm starting up, but I'll take it nice and slow. So. Did that help? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah, that fixed it.
Okay.
It defaulted to some weird random thing that I don't even know what. So.
All right. So we'll get going because I'm already taping. So, all right. The first thing I wanted to do is just take a couple minutes, and I found this article, and it's very recent. It's just from about a couple weeks ago, but we are going to go back and we're going to build the entire RESTful API today. We're not going to worry about public and views and everything else. I just want to get it to work so you can see the kind of thing that we're going to be trying to do. All right. So I believe we don't have to talk about this at all. I think everybody gets this part of it. But the part that's new is basically the green part over. So right there. All right. I think you all understand HTTP and localhost and a port. But this right here is typically referred to as your resource. All right. For us, it's going to be books. Okay. And what's recommended, so I went back and rewrote this thing. What's recommended is as you create this, you version it. So V1 would be, so that would be, for instance, ours will be books V1. All right. Now they're calling that the resource. That's fine. It doesn't really matter. But you're going to see this today. And as it says there, the main data representation in REST is referred to as a resource rather. And they give you a bunch of these. These are all guidelines. I don't want to sit and read to you. All right. But they tell you what to do and what not to do. And this got sent to you today. All right. And they tell you to use pluralized nouns. We're going to do all this stuff. All right. They say to use hyphens to improve readability. I didn't make anything that long, so I really didn't need to go nuts with hyphens. All right. So let's see. Use forward slashes, but not a trailing forward slash. So don't put one at the end. Okay. Don't have file extensions. In fact, just as, for lack of better words, just as some tests, I've gone through and I went back to some of the stuff we've done earlier and I added the .ejs in there. Sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't work. All right. I already mentioned for versioning the APIs. Well, we're just going to be in version 1 today. All right. And then they talk about using the query component to filter the collection. Well, the idea is with a query string, you can only choose what you want. So in other words, what we want here is we want people who work in the IT department in the USA region, for example. All right. So there's not a lot new there, but I just wanted to quickly mention that to you, period. All right. So with that said, there was one more thing I wanted to mention to you. So hopefully you can see this on your screen right now. Again, both these articles I sent today to you, but this talks about understanding module exports and exports in Node. What you're going to see in just a couple minutes when we build our app.js file, it'll only be about 10 lines long. Even though we're going to have 5 different routes, we're not going to put those routes, we are not going to put them inside of our app.js file. Why? Because the standard way to do it is not to do that. All right. So what we're doing is we're moving towards the way we want to write this stuff. So my hope is that by next week we'll bring the database into this and we'll be writing a full-fledged app and we'll be basically setting it in different folders, etc., the way that it's recommended that you do that. Now, I don't want to go over this article at all. I just want to tell you that what you can do is you can create any kind of JavaScript file, and then depending on how you write it, either at the beginning or in the middle, but typically at the end, you'll use a module.exports statement in there, and you'll export the file. Why would you want to do that? Because then you can bring it in from one file into another file, and you're going to actually see that today. All right. So like I said, I just wanted to mention that. All right. So let me get rid of a couple of these things here, because there's just a few things I wanted to mention to you today. I think I brought this page up for you guys before. This is just expressjs.com, and this is the API page for there. All right. The reason that I'm bringing this up is almost anything you want to learn about how to use Express is in here. What do I mean? Well, if you don't understand using the request object, it's all in here. All right. And you can see how big that is. If you don't understand the response object, it's in there. So when we talk about this REQ and this RES and the different things that you can do with it. All right. So down near the bottom, there's also a thing called router. We're going to use that today. All right. And again, if you don't understand what it means, I will go over it. But after I do, if you still don't understand what it means, that's a resource that you can go to take a look for it. All right. Okay. The other thing too is what I decided to do is the file that we're going to use in here. I don't know if I still have it up. Yeah, there it is. The file that we're going to use in here that's going to basically be faking a database for us. This is the file I sent you today. It's got 8 different books in it. All right. Now, I did change the top up here because it wouldn't work without that. But the point is, each of these 8 books has these 9 different features in it. So each book has an ISBN, a title, a subtitle. The subtitle can be blank, an author, and there can be more than one author, a date that it was published, a name of a publisher, some pages, and it can have a description, and it can have an associated website. So why am I even telling you this? Well, hopefully you all know enough about working with books and the like that you realize that of the fields that are in here, the only field in here that's guaranteed to be unique is that one, and that's the ISBN. Now, one of the things I talked to you about before when we talked about primary keys, because, or ID fields basically, is that they should be unintelligible. Well, technically, this is not an unintelligible field. In other words, if somebody knows the ISBN, if somebody actually does know the ISBN from there, they can figure out all that other information that you see on the page. Now, in what we're doing now, that's not that big a thing. It's not like finding out a social security number and being able to find out where somebody lives, where they work, and be able to open up accounts technically in their names, etc. It's nothing like that. But the reason that I'm telling you this is it would have been possible for us to add an ID onto each one of these fields. So we could have made a field up on top here called ID, and this would have been 1, etc. And it wouldn't be bad because there's only 8 books. But this is a subset of another file, the books.json file that has 100 books. So again, even though it would take you some time, you could go to all those files and you could add ID1, ID2, and you could do that literally 100 times. It'd be a pain in the butt, but you could. But then what happens when you get another book and then another book and then another book? So what I decided to do was basically the ISBN field is doing double duty. It's acting as the ISBN for the book, but it's also going to be our ID because each ISBN is unique. All right. And again, hopefully what I just said makes at least a little bit of sense. Okay. So what I'd like us to do, please, and I'm going to have to change my share, but I'd like you to go to your desktop and make a new folder. And the easiest way, just call it something like I don't know, just call it books. That'd be fine. So just call it books. I'm going to do that. You won't see this for a second here, but just give me a second. So I'm coming over here, new folder, and I'm just going to type in books. I don't think I have anything. I do have something called books. Of course I do. All right. So I'm going to call mine books too. You don't have to do that. Yours can be books. If you've got one called books, call it books too. All right. So it's an empty folder I literally just created right now. All right. So why did I do that? Well, I'm going to show you. So I'm bringing up VS Code and I'm bringing it up with that books to file in it. So let me change my share so you can see what the heck I'm doing. All right. Am I correct here? You see Visual Studio Code up on the screen and it says books 2 right here. Am I
Yes.
correct? Okay, good. All right. I will also bring up and I will do a view terminal. When I do this, because I never asked before, can you see my terminal down here as well?
Yeah, we can.
Good. That's good. I still am much more used to doing the terminal and doing it externally, so to speak, having it in another window. But this way, then I don't have to worry about constantly having to go in and change my share all the time. So that's why I'm doing it like this. All right. So the first thing I'd like us to do, and the order in which we do these isn't really very important, but what I'd like us to do is I'd like us to come up to the books here, and we're going to create a new folder right there. And I'd like you to call this folder, just for lack of better words, SRC, because it's where we're going to put most of our source code. Now, sometimes people call it that. They call it a lot of different things. What we will eventually have in our projects, amongst other things, is you will eventually have a models folder where you'll put a lot of your database stuff. You'll essentially, we'll have a views folder. We already looked a little bit at that. And you'll have a routes folder. And those in the routes folder, you're going to have all of your controllers. All right. This is what we're going to be moving towards fairly quickly. All right. Now, one of the things that I sent to you today, because I sent you a zip file or a zip folder that has 3 files in it. 2 of the 3 files we've already gone over. That is that quick little thing on APIs, all right, and that the other thing on module exports. So you can look at that if and as you have time, all right. The other thing that I sent to you, and you won't see this again for just a second, but the other thing that I sent to you in that particular folder, all right. Oh, hold on. I got a thing from Clayton and from John that they want to join, but they didn't get the link. So hold on, let me send them the link. Yeah, they're right, because I normally do that. I had to go into, I'm at my house right now, but I had to go into the campus today because I had to print something out. That's on me, not them. All right, so let me send that to them quickly. So if one or both of them try to come on, if you'd admit them, please, I'd appreciate it, Michael, because you're able to do that.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. So Clayton's been sent it, and I'm sending it to John right now. All right, so both of them have been sent. And I'm going to wait for just a couple minutes because I'd like them to both be here and I don't want to get too far ahead. So. All right, guys, I apologize for that. As I said to Michael, normally I send that out every day. It just slipped my mind today. That's no excuse. It just did. Now, today, I sent you an email, and that email had in it, all right, that email had in it, basically, it had 3 files. One of the files that was in it was a thing on REST APIs. And I went over it. That's what you missed so far. Literally, I spent about 5 minutes on it. It's no big thing, but it's got some general best practices on APIs. All right. The second file, I didn't go over at all, but it talks about modules, exporting and module.exports. And what I just mentioned was what we're building toward when we create a project is, again, a more of an MVC type of architecture where we will have a models folder that'll have our database and our database logic in it. We'll have a views folder, which we've already seen, and we'll have a routes folder. And each, we'll have all of our routes in there separately in separate files, and they'll all have the name controller on them. All right, so that's what we're moving toward. But what I'd like you guys to do, please, is I'd like you to go and if you have that folder, unzip it. And we're going to need to use that other file. And I think it's called booksdb.js. All right. So what I had everybody do, was to go in, go back and change it because it says that I screwed up my share again. All right. So what I had you do was just go in and create a new folder called books. Mine is called books too because I already had one called books. So if you already have one called books, you can call yours books too. But right now, there's just the new project that's called books. Open that up, please, inside of Visual Studio, and then you can create in there a folder named source or SRC. All right. And I'll give you a second to do that because, again, I apologize for not sending out the link for today. All right. So if you've had the chance to do that, then what we need to put into that source folder, what we actually want to put into that source folder, all right, is that file that's called booksdb.js. So if you could move that file into there, all right, and I just did the same thing. I unzipped my folder and moved the file in. And that file has in it 8 different books. Now, I could have given you the URL because that file is out there, but I had to change it a little bit. We are exporting this file right there. Module.exports equal. All right. When you export things, you can export at the beginning, you can export at the end, and if you've got a bunch of stuff in there, you can export more than once in the same file. All right. So I sent you a Word document this morning that goes into that stuff in more depth and breadth of coverage than I'm doing right now. But what this is going to be our input. And rather than actually taking this, I don't know how many lines it is, but it's 8 books and it's about 100 lines. So rather than taking that 100 lines and actually putting it into, all right, rather than actually putting that into our app.js file, which we could do, all right, we're putting it into another file. And literally our app.js file is going to be very, very small. It really is. All right, it's going to be about 10 lines or so. Okay, so my hope is that you were able to do that. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to do, and again, the order doesn't really matter very much, but under books too, so under the main folder here, not in source, but under here, all right, I want us to create our app.js file. All right, so again, and it looks like it did put it in here, so I don't want it there, so I'm going to move it up here. Try to move it up here. Oh, great. Oops. All right, I'm going to remove that one and redo it. All right, come back to here. It looks like it's still trying to put it there, and I'm not sure why, but it did. So I'm going to go out and just do this on my own.
It helps me if you if you click underneath in the space underneath where books db.js is. I think that clicks out into the the books folder. I don't know.
All right, you mean down here?
Yeah, at least for me.
Okay, so I'm going to put my app.js file there, and it looks like you're right, it did work. All right, this file, this app.js file, like I said, is going to be very, very small. All right, in fact, we're going to create it right now. And don't worry, we'll be referencing things we haven't brought in yet, but we're not going to run it yet. All right, so we're going to start it the way we normally start it, which is our const, let's try it again, const express equals require express. All right, I am going to bring in the body parser. I tried doing this project both with it and without it, and it seemed to like it better with it. So I'm going to do a const body parser, and I think I've discussed this before, but just on the off chance I have not, you'll notice that when I'm requiring this, the actual name is body dash parser, but when we gave it a name, our own variable name here, you can't use dashes. Because really it thinks it's when you're working in Java itself, JavaScript, I should say, itself, it thinks you're doing a subtraction. All right, so that's why normally, even though that's what it looks like in the Node Package Manager, this is how we refer to it. Okay, we will do our const app equals express. All right, again, nothing new here. We will set up our port. All right, some people do take that and make it uppercase, some don't. Again, it's not that big a thing one way or the other. And I'm just going to pick one out, 30, 30, 33. I don't know. You don't like that one, pick out any number you want. All right. We're going to put, literally, we got about 4 more lines. All right. Well, down at the bottom, because you know we've done this before, where we do our app.listen. And we listen, whoops, we listen for the port. All right. And there is nothing passed in. And we've got our arrow function. All right, I'll just move down a line just so you can all see it okay. And I'm just going to put in here a console.log. You know, again, what we put in here is up to us. App running on port. Like that. All right. So right now we've got 7 or 8 lines in here. Okay. Now some of the stuff that we're going to put in here right now is going to be new. Some is not. There's about 3 or 4 more lines. One is we want to add the middleware. All right. You already know what this is. We're going to look more at middleware next week, but we're going to add the middleware. What do we have to use in here? Well, we're going to do an app.use, but we're not going to worry about that URL encoded. We're just going to work with JSON today, all right? Because I want us to get used to doing this and hopefully at least having it work. I want us to have a working API by the end of the period today. All right, so we're going to say app.use, and in here, I'm going to say body parser dot JSON, which again means that we're going to be working with JSON. All right, so that's adding in third-party middleware. All right, when you do an app.use, you're basically including middleware. Why am I telling you that? Because we're going to put another app.use line in here, and it's going to be our own middleware. All right. So I'd like you to put this in. Don't run the program because what we're going to allude to, we haven't written yet. So app.use, and we're going to put in here API v1 API. All right. And in English, what this line that is now in blue, in English, what that is saying is for the API that we're going to be using for this program, we will refer to it as /API/v1. One of the things that was in that REST article that I sent you this morning was they talked about versioning. We're in version 1. That's what the V1 is for. So what this is doing basically is it's giving us the path to our API. It's not complete, but it's giving us most of the path to our API. All right. And, it's like, okay, that's fine. But, API, what the heck is that? Well, it's another thing that we can add up here. So I'm going to say again, const API equals require all right. So take a second and put that in. Those 12 lines, this is our complete app.js file right here. This is everything. All right. So again, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be using other files to put in the information. We're starting to, for lack of better words, segregate the stuff out. Now this, and hopefully you understand it, the dot means where I currently am. That's my root folder. That's the thing I call books 2 for me. Underneath that, I'm going to have a folder named source. And underneath that, I'm going to have a file that's named API. So in just a moment, we're going to go in and we're going to start creating an API.js file. And that's where we're going to put in the majority of the stuff that we're working on today. All right. We're going to build it slowly. We're going to build it incrementally. And what I mean is when we start building it, we're going to stick a shell in there of what we want to have happen. But we're only going to put a res.send into each of the methods that we're using just to make sure it works. All right. Then we're going to go into Postman and run each one of these. Again, to make sure that it works. All right. So one last time, I want to quickly go over this. I think, at least my hope is, wow, I've never seen that before. That's interesting. All right. But my guess is at least that these first 3 lines and line 5 make sense to everybody. I don't think we have to go over them anymore. And if I'm wrong, you're going to have to let me know. But again, line 4 says that when we refer to something that's with the API, that it's been defined inside of a folder called source, inside of a file in that folder called API.js. All right. And then to be able to use it, we come in here and basically we give it the path we're going to use for that API. So like I said, hopefully I didn't lose anybody. And it looks like here, I forgot to put the letter A in there. App running. All right. So if you've got all this stuff done, and I tried to give you plenty of time so you could, all right, then you can do a file save. And ideally, at least, we're not going to have to touch this file for the rest of the period. All right. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I want to say it again. We've got a module.exports statement in here. All right. By putting in that module.export statement, all right, and module.exports equal, we're going to be able to bring this file into another program. And when I say into another program, I should say into another file. What file is that? It's going to be inside of our API.js file that we're going to start building literally right now. All right. So you can close this one too. The only thing that you might need from this later, all right, we're going to put some code in there so that if, for example, if you wanted to add a new book, okay, and you might look at this and go, well, that book's already in there. Yeah, we're going to put code in there so if you try to add a book with an existing ISBN, that it won't work. All right. We're also going to go in, and if you try to delete a book that doesn't have an existing ISBN, it won't work. All right. And if you want to update, all right, if you want to update, you've got to give it an ISBN that's existing. So if you're creating a new one, it can't have an existing ISBN. If you're removing an existing one, it must have an ISBN. And if you're updating an existing one, it must have an ISBN. All right. So that's the create, the update, and the delete of CRUD. Read basically doesn't care what you're trying to do. All right. So we've got that done. So the next thing that we're going to do, if you would please, okay, so we've got this stuff. So what we really should do is the kind of junk that we always do at the beginning, and that is, let's do our npm init. We can do a -y here. All right, there's nothing special that we're going to be doing in here. All right, but we'll do that. All right, and that built that, you already know that it built that package.json for us. All right, I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to do 2 installs. I'm going to do an npm I of express. All right, and when that comes back, I'm going to clear and do an npm I -D of nodemon. All right, this again should be nothing new to any of you. We've done this kind of thing several times before. All right, so for now at least, I'm going to clear and I'm going to shrink down the size of my terminal for now. All right, hopefully we won't need to use the books.db file or booksdb.js file much, but we now have in here our package.json, our package lock.json, and our node modules. All right, make sure that your package lock.json, your package.json, and your app.js are not in your source folder. You can tell the only one that's in that source folder is the books DB, and we're going to make our API.js in there in a couple minutes. Before we do that, though, let's open up our package.json and just make a couple changes. All right, I had you make the app.js first because now we don't have to go in and change it, because otherwise it defaults to index.js. So now it basically, instead of defaulting, it changed it to that. That's one thing. Then the next thing is, as I always do, I'm going to come in here and get rid of this, and I'm going to put in here start. And we've got our node app.js, comma, and then our dev start. And I said this before, I'm going to keep saying a lot of the same stuff as we're going, and that is, it doesn't matter what you call this second one. The first one, there are some packages out there that are expecting that it will be a start and to run it, it'll be node followed by the name of your main file. All right. All right, so we've got that done. If you want to, it's up to you. You can put your name in there for the author. There's really nothing else that we have to worry about. You can double check and make sure you've got Express, and you can double check and make sure you've got NodeMon. I don't want to say any more about those because we've talked about those quite a bit. All right. So that's fine. That's a start. All right. Now, let's go in and make sure you're under your source folder, like I said. So under your source folder, all right, click on that and choose new file. And now we want to make API.js. That again should be under your source folder. So if you close the folder, you shouldn't be able to see API.js and you shouldn't be able to see booksdb.js, but you should still be able to see the rest of the stuff in here. All right. Now, we're just going to build this, and there's going to be a few things that are going to be in here that we won't need until later. But I've got the whole project built already. It works. It's not a big problem. And it looks like when I look here quickly, there's about 120 lines. Don't let that throw you because I put a bunch of comments in mine. All right. And there's not that much typing. You're not going to be typing out 120 lines. All right. So as we start here, the first thing we're going to do, all right, you don't come in here. You don't do this. You don't come in and say this. Even though we want to use Express in here, this isn't how you typically do it. Instead, what we're going to put in here is this. We're going to actually use something that exists inside of Express. And that is, we're going to say const router equals require express, express, and then after that, we're going to put in dot router, and it must be capitalized like that. All right. And again, you might say, okay, fine. Why are we doing this? Because when we write our routes now, and that's what we're going to start doing in just a couple minutes. But when we start writing our routes, we're not going to say app.get or whatever. We're going to say router dot. That is typically the way this is going to be done. All right. Now, usually when you're first starting out, you do it kind of the way that we had been doing it. And what I mean is you throw everything in the world almost under app.js. Well, now we're starting to break it up. For now, we're still going to have all of our routes are going to be in this file, but we could literally make a different route file for everything. Not only that, again, we could make a routes folder. After a while, it does tend to get a little bit confusing because you're always doing a dot and a dot and whatever to move around your directory structure. So I decided to try to keep this example that we're going over today a little bit simpler. All right. You may or may not agree as we go through here. So that's our first line. Now we're going to say this. Let books DB, and that's kind of a joke on my part, even though it's not funny. This is not a database. All right. We're using a JSON file to simulate a database. The JSON file that we're using to simulate a database is our booksdb.js. That's why I call this booksdb. All right. And you'll also notice I'm putting the word let there. I'm not putting the word const there. All right. Why? Because what we want to be able to do is to either add books, update books, or remove books. If we made it a const and we tried to do that, we'd be getting errors. So using a const is fine if all you're doing is the read part of CRUD. All right. But since we want to develop this as a full CRUD app, we're making it a let. All right, now with our require in here, and I'm hoping after we go through this that it makes sense, right? And we can put in the .js. I think it'll be fine without it, but I don't know why, but I did put it in before and it didn't hurt anything. All right, so please put in that line. You'll notice the dot means the current directory I'm in. Well, what directory are we in? We're in the source directory. So this is expecting the booksdb.js file is in the same folder as the app or the API.js file that we're working with right now. And they are. Okay, let's pretend for a second that rather than putting it in the source, let's say we put it out here by the other stuff. Then we'd have to say ... which means go up a level. All right, and so there's a lot of ways that you can do this. All right, so the next thing we're going to do, because I just want to see if we can get this to work, and we can remove this comment later, but I'm going to say create shells. And what I mean is for a shell, it's more or less, it's almost like just like a template or something. So shells for each route. All right. Which one? So what do we want to do? I'm going to put a few comments in here and we're going to fill this in just a minute. But we want a route to return all books. We also want a route to return a single book. All right. We'll also want a route. I'm going to close this part. There we go. All right. We'll also want a route to update. In fact, a route to add a new book. I'm going to put them in the order we're going to do these. All right. And we'll want a route to update an existing book. Finally, we'll want a route to delete an existing book. So we're going to write these shells underneath these comments for each one of these. And I'm only putting them there just so we've got a little bit of delimiter between each one of these. Okay, so we're going to start with a route to return all books. All right, typically that's the one you start with. The order in which you write these routes doesn't matter. All right, it's totally irrelevant. So we're going to come in here and do a router. This is a nice short one. Router.get /books. All right, and we're going to have, not booze, sorry, books. And we're going to have our request object and our response object. We will put in our fat arrow function. All right, and in here, literally, whoops, somehow I lost my curly brace. Oh, because I didn't put the curly brace here. There we go. All right. Okay. It's literally one line. Okay. And what we're going to say here is, well, what do we want to do? Well, technically, what we want to do is this. We want to come in here and say res.send, and we want it to send booksdb. All right. And that would work. But what's recommended when you do this, all right, up here we did this let books, what's recommended is, for lack of better words, you kind of make a copy and you work with the copy. So I should have put that up here, but we're going to say this. Let, and I just called it books data. You can call it whatever you want. So let books data equal books DB. All right. And then what we're going to come in here and do the res.send on is going to be books data. All right. So I'll give you a second to key all that in. So we just added line 5. Hopefully, just in case you didn't, let me move this all up there. So hopefully you've got a chance to do everything. So if you're only through line 12, that's fine. All right, I'll give you just a second to put that in. Since we got off to a late start, all right, I'm going to give you your break, but I'll give it to you around 5 after 1 or so. I'd like to write these different things in here. Now, that'll work just fine. There's not a problem with that. Okay? In other words, what we're saying here is, again, we're creating, instead of app, we're creating something that's called router, and it's going to run the express router function on everything. All right? We're saying booksdb is basically what we're calling that file. What we want to do is we want to be able to manipulate that file, but not directly. Why? In case we screw it up. So we're using books data as a copy, for lack of better words. All right. Now, if we do this and run it now, it'll probably work. But what did I say up here? I said we're creating shells. That's not a shell. That's real code. So let's put in here just a message that says show all books. All right. That's it. So when we run this in just a couple minutes, ideally at least, all we're going to see inside a Postman is a message that comes up and it says show all books. And that's fine. Because like I said, we're creating shells here. All right. Now the good news is you can copy this and we're going to be able to paste it 4 times. All right. So let's just go down to the next one. This is a router.get, but remember, if we want just a single book, we need an ID. So this will be show a single book. All right. I'm just going to keep on and on and on, just keep going. And I'm taking for granted that if something we're doing here does not make sense to you, you're going to stop me and just say, hey, wait a minute, what about this? Or whatever. All right. So these are our 2 get routes. Our one route that's going to show everything, and our one route that's only going to show one thing. All right. So we've got those 2 done. All right. So let me move up a little bit. I'm going to copy this down again. And this is going to be to add a single book. Well, if we want to add something, it's not a get anymore. This is going to be a post. All right. So I'm going to say here, add new book. All right. So we now have 3 of our 5 routes. Again, we're going to come in here and we're going to make changes to these after the break. All right. But I want us to be able to run this and see if we can get all 5 of these routes to work. All right. So far we've got our 2 get routes and our post route. All right. All right. The next one that we're going to do in here, and I'd mentioned this the other day, but I'm going to say it again anyway. When you do this, you can put either in put or you can put in patch. I have had some problems using patch. So we're going to actually use put here. We're going to use put, but we're going to write a little bit of our own code in here to make sure that put only does a partial refresh. If you don't know what I mean, that's one of the things we'll be doing after the break. All right, so I'm going to put a message in here that says update existing book. And again, that's a router.put. And then the last one that we'll put in here will be a router.delete. All right. And when you do books, since it's an existing book, you need an ID. And you also need an ID when you're deleting. All right. So I'll change this to delete existing book. Right. Oops. So we now have all 5 of our routes written. They're not doing very much right now. That's totally fine. But what we want to make sure is when we run them and we put in a get request for everything, we get this. When we put in a get request and we give it an ID, we get this. All right. When we put in a get request and a post request, that we get this. When we put in a put request, we get this. And when we put in a delete request, we get this. If we get to that point, that's really where we should be right now. All right. So I'm going to do a file, save. And with that saved, I'm going to go out into Postman. Now, I was playing with this stuff before, as you can see, but I'm going to take everything that I had and I'm not saving it. I'm just going to go on. All right. So we're right here. I'm going to click the plus sign up at the top here. All right. And I'm going to put in a new get request. Now
your view is not on.
Thank you.
Postman.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm into Postman. I appreciate it. Okay. Can you see Postman now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm into Postman. We're first going to try to do 2 different gets. The first get to basically show us all the books, and the second get to show us a single book. Now, you've got your choice in here. You can type in http://localhost:/, or you can just type in the localhost, which is what most people do. But sometimes people like to put in the HTTP. So I'm going to put in here localhost:/, and I believe that the port that we used was 3333. So I'm going to put in localhost: 3333 / API / v1 / books. Now I realize that might be a little hard for you to see. I can't make my screen, the text in Postman. If you can make it bigger, I don't know how to do it. But what you should be putting into that address line there is the word localhost, then a colon, then 3333, unless you used a different port, then a /, then API, then a /, then v1, then a /, then books. So if you have put that in, you should be able to click send. And of course, it isn't showing us anything. So why would that be? Right there, it should be showing us that. And we're getting this thing, and a couple of you have gotten this before, where it says error, connection refused. All right, what I'm going to do is, I had a problem with the machine before. I'm going to close Postman and open it again. I'm not saying that's the problem, but in the past, I've gotten this error, and that's been the problem. So I'm going to have to redo my share in just a moment. All right, back into Postman. Now, localhost 3333 API v1 books. Well, that wasn't it. Of course, I did the entire project before class today. Everything worked, so you would know it wouldn't work now. So let me double check one thing here first. Oh, it's because I used 5555. I didn't use 3333. There you go. So let's try localhost: 5555 / API / v1 / books, and let me hit send. And all right, I guess I still have mine in there. I must not have gotten rid of that line in there that I had that said, show all books. That's what you should see now, is show all books. We'll change it in just a minute. We'll get this. All right. So let me see what I had in mind. So you won't see this for just a second, but give me a sec here. Jump back here. My guess is it might still be running for whatever reason. I used a different port number before, but it looks like it might be running the original copy that I did. Let me ask you guys, all right? Is what showed on the screen, does it say get all books?
I'm having the same error that you had initially, the error connect.
All right, well, make sure that you put the right port number in there and make sure you spell localhost correctly. All right, so again, localhost, then the port number, /API, /V1, /books, if you used everything that I'm using. If it still gives you that error, again, like I said, not always, but in the past, sometimes when I get that error, if I shut Postman down and bring it back up again, the error goes away. All right. John, did yours work?
No, I'm having an error in my app.js on line 2, the body parser.
Okay, so we'll take a look at that in a second. Clayton, did yours work?
No, I am having problems with my app.js.
All right, then let's go back to the app.js before we go any further.
I had the same error as Clayton with the body parser, yeah.
Okay. Oh, you know why we got that error? Can anybody tell me why we got that error?
To need quotations?
Nope. It's much simpler than that. What did we not install? That would be body parser. All right, we did not, we did an npm I on Express, but we didn't do an npm I on body parser. So bring up in your terminal, all right, so bring up your terminal and do an npm I. If your app is still running, just stop it with a Control-C and do an npm I body -parser. Okay, I didn't do it either, I don't think, but all right. Then go back into Postman and run the same thing again and see if it works. All right, now what's funny is now that I did that, now I've got again that error connecting, the connection refused. All right. Let me ask you guys, all right, when you went back in, did that error in your app.js go away? Maybe you're still doing it right now, and that's fine.
It didn't fix it for me either.
Yeah, it didn't fix it for me either.
Okay,
No,
what's the error that you're getting? If you go into your console log at the bottom, if it crashed, it should show you an error.
Yeah, body is not defined. Line 2, const body parser equals require body parser.
Okay, when you required it, am I right in assuming you said const body parser little body capital P little arser equals require, then you had in quotes, double quotes or single quotes, body -parser, all in lowercase. Is that correct?
It is for me, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was getting the error of router.use. It requires a middleware function, but got an object.
Well, we've already added that, so all right. I'll tell you what, it sounds like you're all getting the same error. If somebody could please take a picture, so have showing on your screen the error in the console, hit your print screen, save that to a ping file or something, and just email it to me. It's 1:07. We'll take a break till 1:20 and see if we can fix it. All right. I'm not worried about it because in the worst case, I'm going to send you everything I have. All right. And mine works because I've already got a working copy of this. But I wanted us to do it together because I think there's a lot to be said for getting it done and working on it together. All right. So again, please, somebody, I don't care who does it, but let's take a break till 1:20 and somebody take a picture of your error and email it to me, please.
Mr. Scott.
Yes,
Yeah, real quick, can I see the app.js?
sure.
Just wanna make sure.
Whatever you use down here too, whatever you use here has to be whatever you called it here. So.
Did you say not to put the body parser in quotations, or does it matter?
Are you talking about right here?
In the cons, yeah.
It has to be in double quotes. All right, because you're giving it the name that it has in npmjs.org. It can be single quotes, is what I said. You can use single or double. I know that it must be some setting that I've turned on in Visual Studio Code, because even if I save almost everything, even if I save it in single quotes, it converts it to double quotes anyway.
Yeah, now I'm getting the type error router middleware error.
Okay, well, we'll look at that one later. Okay. Has everybody seen now? Can I go over to the API.js so you can take a look at that?
Yes.
All right. Hold on a second. Oh, I've got my wrong file up. That's why it's giving me that. Okay. All right. I brought up the finished one. So hold on. Because foolishly, I've got two versions of Visual Studio Code running. There it is. All right. Can you still, I'm going to probably have to do change my share here. So let me do that. All right. So this is our API.js file. Now it's telling me sharing is paused, but I just changed it.
We see the API file. Oh,
You do? Okay.
it went away now, but okay, it's coming back.
And does it say books 2 over here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. But mine's still saying sharing is paused. So I don't know why it doesn't normally do that. But if you can see it, that's what matters to me.
Okay, yeah, I fixed my body parser error, and now I have the router.use requires a middleware function
Okay.
without an object.
All right, we'll go back and look at that in just a moment.
Did you say we were taking our break right now, Mr. Scott?
Yes, yes. But with that use, the only thing I can think of, and you all said that you didn't think that was a problem on yours. All right. But you've got to do that app.use right there. Now, what I'll do real quickly, let me do a file save, and I'm going to change. You won't see it. All right. This is port 3333. It isn't 5555. I brought up the new version. So let me go back again and come in here and do localhost : 3333/API/v1/books. And it's a get. I'm going to click send. And now I've got a could not request. I don't know what the darn problem is here. Like I said, I wrote this earlier today. I ran everything 2 or 3 times. Everything worked every single time. All right. So I think what I'm going to do is after the break, I'll bring up the working one and we'll just work off of that one. All right. So you'll have more typing to do and I'll have less typing to do, I guess. Take your break, please. Kidding me. Oh. Yes. Mm. All right, I'm not sure if you guys are back or not, but let me just tell you, and I'll mention it again in a minute. And that is, I sent you a completed version of the project. All right. Now, I think the reason that you were getting that error with the body parser is that we had not installed the body parser. I don't get that because I've used body parser without installing it before. So I'm not sure why you would get the error that you got. I really don't know. But it looked like the error that you were getting was in the require line. And that typically says that the problem is that either it wasn't installed or for some reason it was not installed correctly. All right. And you might say, well, I did an npm I body hyphen parser and it's looked like it worked. I believe you. But there have been times before where I've gotten that message, and what I do rather is I do an npm uninstall on body parser and then I reinstall it again. All right. I mean, we're under the control of the software here. So if weird things are going to happen, there's not all that much we're going to be able to do about it. Let me ask the question though, do you see my Postman on your screen right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So what I want to show you here is basically what's supposed to happen when we get all done. That's what I want to show you, is what's supposed to happen when we get all done. So all this junk I've got here, I'm closing it. And I'm going to create a new request right here. So we should be able to come in here, and I believe it's 5555 I'm using. I'm even going to put in the whole thing. So HTTP, HTTP colon / localhost colon 5555 / API / v1 / books. Now, once I send this, it should show me all 8 books that are in here. All right, so let's see. And it's kind of hard to see, I suppose, but there's number 1, number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I'm going to go down to the last one here, and I'm going to grab the very last one. I'm going to grab the ISBN. I'm copying that to the clipboard, and I'm going to append this onto the end right here. So I'm going to put / and then that ISBN. Now I'm going to go back up to the top. All right, so I'm back here at the top, but I put in now, so now this request is HTTP colon / localhost colon 5555 / API / v1 / book / and then that ISBN. So when I click send, I get just that last one, rethinking productivity in software engineering. So the get all works, the get single one works. All right. So what am I going to do next? I'm just trying to give you, show you here what's going on. I'm going to grab every bit of stuff that's in here, all that, and I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. Okay. Why? Because I'm going to take it and I'm going to paste it back in here. So I want to go to a post. And now I want to come in here, and after I click on body, and I go over on raw, and I go over to JSON. I'm going to paste this in. All right. Now, that book's already in there. I think you'd agree with that. We just looked at it. So if I try to send this, all right, it comes back and it says error, cannot post. Okay, well, the biggest problem is when I do this, I shouldn't have an ISBN in there. So with this post right here, all right, I don't need the slash on the end either. I'm trying to post an existing book. All right, so I've got in here, it's a post request, http://localhost:5555/API/v1/books. So I'm attempting to re-enter an existing one in here. And the key thing is we've already got that ISBN in the system. So when I click send, I get book already exists in database. That's actually what it should say. All right, so I am going to add a new record. I'm just going to come to the end right here, and I'm going to add a few numbers. So 666 doesn't mean anything. So for the title, I'm going to put my name. Well, I'm just going to say hello there. All right, and no subtitle. For the author, I'm going to put my name in there. I'm going to change the publisher just because I want all this stuff to change. So we'll say Wiley. The number of pages, I'll just change to 333. I'm going to totally get rid of the description. There's a period in there. And I'll leave the website the way it is. So I think you'd agree, looking at this, I have changed this record. I have changed the ISBN. I have changed the title. I have changed the author. I have changed the publisher. I have changed the pages and the description. I left the website the way it was, etc., but that's fine. So now with that in there, again, I'm attempting to post. So I'm attempting to add this record now to our list of books. All right, so it's http://localhost:5555/API/v1/books. And when I click send, it's showing me now, if I go back in here to my list of books, all right, well, it just added that one. How do I know it was actually added to the list? I go back in here and I don't need this anymore. So I go back in here to my get, all right, and I'm going to do a get request of everything. So just with books. So again, I'm coming back and I'm changing that to a get request, http://localhost:5555/API/v1/books. And I click send. And now if I go through my book list and I go to the very end, there's my book. Hello there with my name on it, etc. All right. And again, if you're just watching right now, that's totally fine. Because now what I've been able to demonstrate to you is doing a get to show all books, doing a get to show a single book, and now a post where we added a new record. All right. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to grab every bit of this new record that I just put in, or this new book, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to grab it and I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. All right. Now, I'm going to go in and I want to create a new request. I want that to be all emptied out. And this time I'm going to do a put. When I do a put, again, I have to come back in here now. It's reset, raw, and JSON. All right. Now I'm going to paste this back in, but I'm going to make some changes in just a minute. All right. So it is a put right now. I haven't even written what I want to do yet. We'll do that in a minute. All right. I'll need to do the put with that particular ISBN. So the route is going to be http://localhost:5555/API/v1/books. 5555 slash API slash V1 slash books slash then that particular ISBN. All right. So let's make a couple changes, but I'm not going to change everything. Let's give it a subtitle. So we'll leave the title the way it was. Okay. And I'm not touching the ISBN. So I'm going to get rid of both of those. I'm going to put a subtitle in here. This is my subtitle. And for the author, I'm going to put in my complete name. If I'd spell it right. And I'm going to leave the published alone. I'm going to leave the publisher alone and the pages. But I'm going to go down to the description and I'm going to add this is just something, it can be stupid, but this is an exciting book. And the website I'll change as well. So it'll have https://jpscott.com. So you can see that out of those 9 fields, I have changed 4 of them. So the other 5 should, ideally at least, maintain the values that they had before. So again, it's a put. And since I only want to change 1 record, of course, I need to put in my ID, which for us is the ISBN. All right. So I click send. And you can see down here, if you look, the changes that were made. So it's got a subtitle now. The author's name has been changed. The description has been changed. Looks like the website wasn't changed, and that's probably a mistake, and we'll look at that in a minute. All right. But it looks like, other than, like I said, this website, now we'll look at that in a second, that everything worked. Okay. So is that a big thing? Just for one reason it is. And I want to do one more thing. And that is, let me copy the ISBN again. All right. And let's make sure if we do a get, and we show everything, let's make sure that indeed in our list of books now that it has changed. So there it is. And again, we're going to look in just a second and see why that thing didn't work for the website. I'm not worried about that. All right. So now I have been able to go in and do a get all, a get, a post, and a put. So the only major operation that's left is a delete. All right, so I'm going to go down here to delete. And I need all this, but again, I need to tell it what book to delete. So I did an http://localhost:5555/v1/books/ and then the ISBN that we had. All right. And it's down here. I'm just going to go back up to the top. Doesn't matter where we are when we do this. All right. And I'm going to click send. And it says book successfully deleted from database. How do we know that? Again, we go back in after books. I remove the slash and the ISBN, and I go back and I do a get. All right. And I click send. There are my books. And if I go down to the bottom, that book is no longer there. Oh, it looks like maybe it is there. So what didn't work? It said that it was successfully deleted. All right. I'm going to try to delete it again. All right. I should get a message now if it's not there anymore that says the book's not in the database. All right. Oh, that's a get. I'm sorry. So I should come in here and do a delete. And it says book does not exist in the database. All right. However, and I'll clear both these out. I want to start with fresh data. So I'm not using something that could be cached. So I'm going to come in here. And again, I'm going to do a get. And it'll be http:// localhost, in fact, it's right here. There it is. And I do my send. And when I go down to the bottom, well, I'm looking. And it looks like it's still there. I have absolutely no flaming clue. Let's take a look at all the code though. So let me go and change my share. We're going back again into Visual Studio Code. And I'm bringing up the working copy that I have. So ideally, what you're going to see on your screen then, ideally, where is it? Is over here, it's called New Book API over here. I want to go over all of the code that's in here. All right. So taking it from the top, because I want to go over everything. So this was the exact same thing that we had written before. There's nothing new there. All right. And again, I believe that the reason that, we had the error before with the body parser is we hadn't installed it. That's on me. Okay. All right. Everything else hopefully worked. Everything else looks okay as far as I can tell. So that's the first file. Now let's look at, first, let me go over the books file. Okay. And if I come back to this books file and I close it and I open it again, well, what you'll notice is that file is not in there. All right. Now you may say, oh, geez, that's right. Why isn't it in there? All right. We're not working with a database. We are working with JSON. And either those two are not in sync with one another, or I actually removed it. We'll look in just a couple minutes. But first, we've looked now at app.js. I don't think we need to talk about that anymore. But I want to look at api.js. And my hope is, as we go through this, again, if something does not make sense, you will ask. All right. So taking it from the top, and again, there's about 120 lines in here. And it'll probably take us a good 10 or 15 minutes to go through it. All right. So again, typically when you have a routing folder, which is, we don't have a routing folder, but I put all my routes in a file, you set up line 1 like this. Again, you don't have to call it router, but that's a standard name. Just like when you say const express, you don't have to call it express. All right. But people just typically do whatever, that is here in this case. That's what they call this. All right. The second one that's in there, line 3, is basically allowing us to use the contents of the booksdb.js file. And in order to do that, we've got to give it a path. Also, and I mentioned this to you before, that in order to do this, we use a let as opposed to a const right there. All right. Why? Because we want to at least potentially be able to change this. With a const, you're not able to. And that's the same reason that line 5 is a let. All right. Then at first we came in and we made these shells. We had some problems with it. All right, that's fine. But I'm going to get rid of this and just go over these. So I want to go over each one of the 5 routes that are in here. All right. So the first one basically just says that whenever you go to our path, and remember our path is http:// http:// localhost : 5555 if you're running this one, or the one we did originally, 3333, okay, /API/v1/books. So again, I'll just put this in here as a comment, okay? So returning all books would be http:// localhost : and then whatever this was. And in here, when we did it, again, in our app.js, we were using port 5555 in this copy. All right. So that would have to be 5555 All right, let me get rid of this. /API/v1/books. Now, I'm asking this question, and please be honest with me. Does what we're doing right there, you don't have to say anything unless it doesn't make sense. So does it make sense to you? All right, then I have to take for granted that since nobody is saying anything, that it does. All right. That's why I pulled the database part out of here, because this is enough. You know, you know JavaScript, but you're learning it in a different way, because the way you write JavaScript for the server isn't identical to the way that you write JavaScript for the client. All right, they're different. The client, by and large, is easier. There are certain things that you can do in client-side JavaScript that you cannot do in server-side JavaScript, and vice versa. So all we're saying right here is, hey, if I put in this path, show me everything that's in that file. That's all we're saying. If I do it this way, where I have to put in a /:ID, and it, when I put that in, so if I say like /1, that should show us, the book with the ID or ISBN of 1. All right, so let's take a look at what's in there. I think that this one, unless I'm mistaken, you all said that you're cool with that one. So let's go down to this one here. It's not a real long routine. That's all of it right there. So let's talk about what's in here. All right. So we're saying when we put in /books/ followed by a number, and it's an ISBN number. So this represents an ISBN number right there. All right. Okay, so our request and response, we've got their const ID equals req.params. Okay, what that's going to basically do is it's going to end up finding all of the ISBNs for us. How does it do that? Well, notice we called it ID here, and that's it there, but we're telling it to go through the list of ISBNs. So let me say that again. All right. req.params. Remember, we're the requester. If you see something with req, that means it's something you're providing. If you see something with res, that's something that's being provided to you by the server. So we're making an HTTP request right there. And that request, that is this. That is whatever number we are, that's whatever number we are appending onto here, right there. All right, so that's what that is. All right, there we go. All right, this is the key line right here. Okay, find is one of the newer ES5, ES6 functions. When I say newer, it's probably now about 6 years old. But really, when we had ES5 and ES6, all right, and really that's ECMA 6 and ECMAScript 6 and 5, it's the newer version, the newer stuff that's in JavaScript. What find does, all right, is it comes back and it returns the first match. So it looks and it says, hey, look for the first match in books, which I refer to as B, all right? And in this whole thing, the first time where you find an ISBN that equals whatever it is I keyed in up here, that's the one I want. All right. If you don't find anything, this is what we do. All right. And I guess I was a little quick in what I showed you before, because it did say book does not exist in database, but if you would have looked off onto the side, there would have been a 404 error code, which meant file not found. And in essence, that's what it is. All right. So we're telling it to go through here, and we are appending onto the end of our URL a number. And we're telling the student, or we're telling the system rather, that that number will be referred to as ID. That's what line 14 is doing. It's saying grab whatever we put into that parameter request, which was that, and call it ID. We could have called it Ralph. It doesn't really matter. But since it is an ID, we called it ID. All right. Then we ran the find method on our list of books, and we told it to look through each one of those and look through each ISBN in each one of those 8 books. And if you find a match, basically you can come back. You're done. If you go through all 8 books and you don't find a match, all right, you're done too. But if you find a match, grab that information and really grab the entire book information and stick it into book. So book, technically, all right, this is, you can look at it as basically this is a Boolean. What do I mean? It means that either it's empty because it didn't find a match, or it's got all the information in it. And if it's empty, meaning it returned false, we're sending a 404 message to the system, and we're letting it know that the book didn't exist. We didn't have to send anything here. We could have literally done nothing here, but then you're not really telling the user anything. By at least putting a message like that in there, you were letting them know that they screwed up, for lack of better words. And remember, when it's a 400 error, it's something you did. If for some reason the server was down, we'd get a 500 error back, or 500 something error back. This is a return statement, meaning that if there was nothing, if it didn't find a match, it'll return and it never hits this line. We wouldn't want it to hit that line if there was no book to show. Rather, we want it to return and just on the screen, rather, show us that error message. So looking at that, my next question is, and again, if I hear silence, that's fine. Is there anything than what we just went over there in lines 12 through 23 that does not make sense? Please ask if you have questions. All right, then I'll jump down to the next one. Okay. When we did this up here, we're asking for one field. All right. Remember, there's 9 fields, including the ISBN. There are 9 different fields in each one of the records. I don't remember exactly what they all are, but you know them. The ISBN, the title, the subtitle, the author, etc. All right, so we're only asking for one right there. Now, when we get down to here to add a new book, we need all 9 of them. All right, what do I mean? Well, we need to know the title that the person's put in there. I should start with we need to know the ISBN, the title, the subtitle. I won't go through every one. You can read them. All right. And that basically is not, it is a request.body. That's everything that we're putting in there. That's all 9 fields. What we're doing right there, okay, is when we put in a new record, and you saw me do this just a minute ago, but when you go in and you put in a new record in a post request, all right, again, that's what you saw me do, okay, just a couple minutes ago. That literally goes into the system as a JavaScript object. What we're telling it right here is we're starting to do what's called deconstruction. And we're letting it know that what we're going to want to work with are the fields individually in here. All right, I don't know why, because I think the system must have put in that last comma. I'm just going to leave it there. All right. So we're doing some deconstruction there. Now, this we've already went over. We're telling it to try to find a match. Why? Because if it finds a match, so before when we checked this, it was if not book, but now we're calling this book exists. And if a book does exist, we've already got a book in there with that ISBN number. So maybe it would have been better, rather than writing book already exists in database, maybe a better error message right there would have been a book with this ISBN already exists in the database. All right. So we're doing a return on this. Why? Because there's no sense in going on if the ISBN we put in has already been taken. Because again, the ISBN represents our ID. So if we get down to here to line 45, now we're creating a new object. It's called new book. And it's going to grab that ISBN from what we put in, that title from what we put in, and on all the way down. All right. And then this is a standard JavaScript array function. We're doing a push method. What does that mean? That means add that new, everything that was in that book's data. So add that new record or that new book. All right. We want to add it to our book's data. And what are we adding? We're adding new book. And what's new book? Right there. All right. Now, just so you know, okay, what we did next is we did a res.send. Why did I do a res.send? Just so you could see that on the screen. Now, quite often, and we're going to start doing this next week, rather than that, rather than that, a lot of times what you do is this. So I might do something like this, a res.redirect, and maybe to /books or something like that. So a lot of times what happens is if you're trying to add a record, you click a button and it works, you want to go back to your home page. All right. And you're going to start seeing that, like I said, next week. So looking at this one, it's a little longer. So from lines 25 through 60. So it's 35 or 36 lines or whatever. Is there anything in the post method that does not make sense to anyone? Please ask. All right. Then moving on. We've now talked about 3 of the 5. So let's go and talk about updating a single book next. This by now should look familiar to you. It's the same thing. Whoops, geez Louise. It's the same thing we did last time. All right. Grabbing the ID. And that's again going to end up being what we use later for the ISBN, and basically grabbing everything that we've added that's in the request body. All right. Then just like before, we did this exact same thing before. Why? Because if we're going to update a book, the book has to be there. So that's what we're checking right now. For lack of better words, is the book there? If it's not there, we just return this. You can be a lot fancier with the way you return things. You already saw this as an example. When you return something, where was it? You can do a res.status. All right. Now, why didn't I do a res.status here? Why didn't I do a res.status in the one we're looking at now? Because there really has to be a status number that equates to whatever the problem was. And if there was, we could have done that. Eventually, what we might want to do right here, I don't know. What we might want to do right here is to write our own 404 page, our own error page that might be in a different number, or a different file rather. Why would we want to do that? we might want to write a generic error page so that if the user does something wrong, they're given a generic message, all right, on a different page. And then you can put a link on there to go back again. All right. Do you have to do that? Of course not. You're in charge. But that's something that, we'll be talking about error handling. So if we get down to here, if we get down to that point, all right, if we get to that point right there, okay, then we're trying to update an existing record. So this is ugly as heck. So let me move this down just a little. There we go. So what are we doing right there? Hopefully you all remember that ternary operator, that question mark colon operator. All right. This says we're writing our own routine right here. This is our own function. The line 82 is a function. All right. And what it is saying in English is, if it's going to look through all the fields that are in here, and it's, remember, it's a put routine, so it's looking to go in and make updates. And what it's saying is, hey, if there's nothing in there, so if we didn't include the field, use what was in there previously. If we did include something, then use the update. So this val is either going to be equal to prev, and all prev is again what was in there previously. All right, and this val that's right here, that is what we changed. So it's going to go in here and it's going to check, and it's going to say, okay, for the title, did we change the title? For the subtitle, did we change the subtitle, etc. Can somebody tell me, because I'd like a little interaction, what field is not in here right now? Come on, 8 of the 9 fields are in here. Which one's missing? In fact, it looks like I got the websites missing too. That's one of them. I don't know how, but I missed that. So let's grab that.
I was gonna say website, yeah.
That is true. So I'll add that. You should do the same. So this should say website. And this should say website. Oops, like that it shouldn't. All right, somebody tell me this then. When we ran this, what was the first field we had in there?
ISBN.
And what field is not shown on here?
ISBN.
Why? You know this, even if you think you don't. You know this. Because it's the ID. You don't change the ID after you do this. So this is not allowing us, if for some reason you tried to choose to change the ID, you won't be able to, because it's not listed in here amongst the things that we are updating. So even if you do change it, I don't know, I didn't even try to do that, but if you tried changing it, this is not going to be going back and upload it. Does that make sense to everybody? Again, if it does make sense, don't say anything. If it doesn't, say something. All right, so we're running this update field or not function. We are running this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So for each one of the fields, it's running this. It's going in and it says, okay, are we updating the title? If we're not, we just use the existing title. If we have, we're using the new title. Then it does subtitle, then author, then publish, then publisher, then pages, then description, and now website. All right. Then when we get down to here, all right, now we're doing our check because we're about to make the change, but we got to make sure the one we change is the right one. All right. And one line, believe it or not, you learned this in AWD1111, whether you had Mr. Gudmisted or Mr. Scott. Line 98, we did talk about splice. All right. And that's what that's saying is, all right, into updated book, we want to put book index, which is the one, basically it's everything, it's the ID we just found, and we only want to do that once. And then we send back, notice here, another status. 200 means it worked. So not only could we could have sent a message here too, I guess. All right. There's all sorts of stuff we could have done here, but we're sending back the updated book. So you should be able to see then what's been changed. So another fairly long method. All right. Starting on what? Line 62 and going all the way down to 102. So about 40 lines. Is there anything that I just went over in here that does not make sense to people? Hopefully you understand why I didn't want to bring the database into this now, because I wanted us to have this fundamental understanding first. Anybody? All right, then let's look at the last one, which is pretty short, really, compared to what we just looked at. All right. And that's the delete. So that's deleting a single book. So again, we'll need to provide an ID. By now, I shouldn't have to mention what this is anymore. Here again, we are searching for the matching ID. If we don't find a match, there's no sense in going on. So again, we're returning a 404 that says that book does not exist. All right. And then another ES5, ES6 thing, which is filter. And what this filter does is it says, okay, our books DB, I basically want you to rewrite it and I want you to include everything except the one that we just deleted. And when we get done, we do a res.send that says book successfully deleted from database. We could have done here a res.status with a 200 again if we wanted to. All right, so there's a lot of ways. So what I'm saying is we could have said here res.status and then in parentheses 200.send. There are so many different ways that this stuff can be written. All right. And it's not that any one way is better than the other. Now, I want to show you one more thing. If you remember, in here, where are we? In this books.db file, at the beginning, we put in here at the very beginning, module.exports equal. All right. What is that equal to? It's everything between here and here. Since it's the whole file, there's absolutely nothing wrong with putting it at the beginning like that. All right. On the other hand, when we get done with all of this, we could have literally said module.exports equal and then done each one of these. That doesn't make much sense. But when we're all done, we say module.exports equal, and notice it's equal to router. By the time we get to the point where we have a routes folder, all right, and we're going to have a module.exports in each one of those. But the reason I'm bringing that up and the reason that that's important is I am now making that available to any other part of the program that needs it. All right. And we're telling it what we want right here, what we want to export. And that's everything, basically router.everything. All right. And then back in here, that allows us to grab everything that's in that file. All right. And use it. I don't know if what I said, by and large, made sense, didn't make sense. I am so tired of this, and you might say you are, but believe me, you're not as tired as I am of me writing something, having it totally work, and then show it to you guys and have it not work. Pardon my French, but that pisses me off to no end. All right. That's not the way it's supposed to be. All right. So for this weekend, because I'm just about finished, and I told you they'd be 2-hour lectures from now on. But for this weekend, you have to finish up the test, the node test, which had the BMI problem on it, and it had the loan app problem on it. If you do have any questions, problems, etc., some of you have already done this, feel free to email me what you've got. It doesn't help much. I'm just telling you this. It does not help much when you take a screenshot and you say, hey, what's wrong with this? I need to, be able to see it in context. That's why when I ask you to zip your file or zip your whole program and send it to me, because sometimes what you're showing me, yeah, that's an error, but it's being caused by something else in the program. All right. And that's why I ask you to send me all that stuff. All right. So please try to get that done. I believe everybody else is caught up on everything else. Next week, we're going to try to expand this somewhat. All right. And get it to work with the database. What I want to do is by the end of next week, ideally at least, I want us to be done. I want us to be done with MySQL. There are a lot of Node.js apps that do use MySQL, but not next week, but the first week in October, all right, which is like the 3rd or something like that. I want us to start getting into MongoDB, which is a NoSQL database. That will probably spend a good 2 to 3 weeks on. And we're going to, at that time or towards the end of that, we're going to bring React in. All right. Then my hope is that we will be able to start working on some big project. I'm not sure yet what it'll be. It very well might be some kind of an e-commerce site or something along those lines. That again, we'll get to a certain point, then I'll say, okay, now go make it yours. All right. So that's the plan. Anybody have any questions on anything we've gone over today? Anything? All right. So like I said, I will be online. I do have my granddaughter has got a soccer game tomorrow and she's got one on Sunday. So I'll be gone during that time. But other than that, I should be around most of the time. If I can be of help, please feel free to call on me. Okay. All right. Have a good weekend then. See you on Monday.